Good morning and welcome to Bongino Report. Early edition. Siblings in Spain are rescued by police from parents suffering from, no joke, the woke mind virus. Venezuelan officials reportedly helped smuggle Transgender gang members into the United States. Trump refuses to lift tariffs on Canada. Why Senator Thom Tillis is a traitor to this country and needs to be primaried ASAP. Trump announces a 100% tariff on foreign-made movies. The Supreme Court allows for Trump's ban on transgender military service members to take effect. And Columbia University lays off 180 staffers after Trump cuts millions in federal funding for the school. All this on Bongino Report, early edition. Through a curtained window, your neighbor, the children next door, two little ones, one a little bit older. Together they're playing, laughter, faint but unmistakable on quiet afternoons. And then one day, they're just gone. Days pass, and then weeks. Months turn into years. There's no more sounds, no signs of life from these children. You don't recall the family ever moving, and yet the shutters stay closed. The gate never opens. The children no longer come out to play. Locals begin to whisper, something isn't right in the house on the hill in Oviedo, Spain. It wasn't until a regional blackout swept through northern Spain last week that the mystery cracked open. Officers responding to a concerned neighbor's report visited the seemingly abandoned home. And the woman who answered the door warned them to be cautious. Her children, she said, were very sick. And she then instructed police officers to wear 3 face masks over top one another before entering her home. What police found inside stunned them. Heaps of garbage, shelves overflowing with expired medication, cribs instead of beds, walls scrawled with monsters, a seriously ill cat, which had seemingly not been taken to the vet because the parents in the home feared leaving their house. But the children inside were not ill. In fact, they were prisoners. The 3 siblings, 8-year-old twins and their 10-year-old brother, hadn't set foot outside since 2021. Isolated, filthy, overwhelmed by the outside world. They were so removed from reality that they screamed in awe at a garden snail when they were finally let out. Their parents, a German man and an American woman, now sit behind bars without bail, charged with child abandonment and psychological abuse. Now, why were these children imprisoned in their own homes since 2021? Spanish investigators suggest COVID syndrome. The parents have to this day continued to live in radical fear ever since the first set of lockdowns. Fear, of course, is the most effective instrument of social control, an invisible leash that wraps around the mind. And that's apparently what happened here, to the point where these parents abused their own children in an unconscionable way. And the narrative was simple, right? Trust the experts. That's what we were hearing during the COVID panic. Obey the orders. Surrender your autonomy for the greater good. But in the process, reality itself became malleable, and some people never got out of it. That was how restrictive and all-encompassing the fear-mongering was during COVID. That some would be driven to this day to keep their children in an abusive situation in the name of COVID. Now, as the grip of that fear loosens, others remain shackled, imprisoned not by walls or bars, but by their own minds, by an ideology. And on the flip side, countless of us, countless sane, rational people, many of whom probably woke up right away or never even needed to be woken up to the COVID scam, realize that they were lied to. This story only solidifies what most of us already know, that our institutions aren't worth a thing anymore. If it can drive you to that kind of fear for years on end, when there is no threat of COVID, And that awakening is the moment that we are in right now. It's a rejection of the blind faith that once, I think, was so prevalent in the West. Because the people who claim to protect us have instead chosen to scare in the name of control. And so they no longer deserve our admiration or our trust. When fear grips a nation, control becomes easy. It seeps through borders, through minds. And even through the cracks of sovereign nations. And even though there is so much, I think, backlash from our institutions, that hasn't prevented many of us from waking up. And that brings me to my next story. A newly released intelligence assessment revealed yesterday that corrupt Venezuelan government officials have been facilitating the illegal immigration of members of the brutal Tren de Aragua gang into the United States. The memo, released by the National Intelligence Council, revealed that these officials aim to destabilize governments and undermine public safety, weaponizing chaos just as effectively as fear. So for years, Tren de Aragua has been embedding itself among waves of migrants fleeing Venezuela's collapse. Per the DHS, over 600 Venezuelan migrants with likely ties to TDA crossed the U.S. border illegally during Joe Biden's presidency. And that's just Joe Biden's presidency. And this is bad, but what's worse is the whole thing was apparently facilitated by some elements of the Venezuelan government. Now, I say some elements on purpose because the report states that this was being done by some parts of the Venezuelan government, but that the Maduro regime, this is a quote from the Director of National Intelligence Office, the Maduro regime probably does not have a policy cooperating with TDA and is not directing TDA movement to and operations in the United States. But even so, the fact that parts of Maduro's government, some elements, were pushing for Tren de Aragua to overrun this country is enough to view that government as a hostile foreign power, an enemy of this country. This is a man who stole the election in Venezuela. There's no democracy to be had here. He is a brutal dictator who has oppressed his people. And usually I'm not very interested in foreign dictators who oppress their own people. I think it's really not any of our business, that we should work on making America great. Let's focus on getting rid of dictators in this country, such as the last admin, where they were putting pro-lifers and traditional Catholics behind bars or infiltrating their communities. But at the same time, if a foreign power is helping to facilitate an invasion at our border, helping to root an illegal gang of migrants in our country that have spread all across the continental U.S., then it becomes a different story. Then it becomes an issue of defending the homeland, not an issue of meddling in foreign affairs that have nothing to do with us. Iraq and Afghanistan, the other side of the world. Was that necessary for human lives to be lost in those conflicts? Did we accomplish anything with those conflicts? The answer is no. But when it comes to foreign powers actually allegedly facilitating an invasion into our country by foreign terrorists, this is a whole other story. We have, of course, foreign-born federal judges now preventing this admin from doing its job. We have to recalibrate how we think about foreign affairs, I think. I don't like regime change. I don't like what's become of regime changes in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. And at the same time, we have to be honest about when it's authentically a threat to this country. And clearly, what the Venezuelan government, or at least elements of it, have done to our country is a serious threat that is worth addressing wholeheartedly. And for some reason, federal judges and members of Congress are against this, are against the protection of their own people. And why would that be? Again, we are an institution that in many ways, our government crumbling around us. They don't have the most basic understanding of what their role is in this country, which is to protect the American people, specifically from things like foreign terrorists taking over our country. There's a massive disconnect and a sign that the system, the institutions are broken. I've got a lot more to say about foreign affairs. We have some terrorist talk to get to. A Republican senator, we're talking about institutions here, and senators and members of Congress who don't deserve to be here. This senator needs to go. He needs to be fired. North Carolina, anybody from North Carolina in the chat, you guys are on notice. We're going to talk about your state, but first we have to talk about our wonderful sponsors. Together we have fought for the same things: faith, freedom, our country that we love. One of our biggest supporters over the years has been Patriot Mobile. If you are part of the Bongino Army, you should be on Patriot Mobile. Our candidate may have won, but this is no time to rest. We must keep supporting companies that share our values and stand for what we believe in. Switch to Patriot Mobile with confidence, knowing you'll get outstanding nationwide coverage because they operate on all 3 major networks. You can even have 2 numbers on 2 different networks on a single smartphone. Not only do they have the Silver Lock guarantee, you'll get the Patriot Mobile coverage guarantee. Every dollar you spend supports a company that believes in our First and Second Amendment rights, the sanctity of life, our veterans and first responders. Switching is easy. It only takes minutes from wherever you are. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their 100% US-based team will take amazing care of you. Go to patriotmobile.com/Evita or call 972-PATRIOT. Get a free month of service on sign up with code Evita. That's EVITA. patriotmobile.com/Evita or call 972-PATRIOT. All right, ladies, I have a huge announcement from my friends at Genucel Skincare. Right now, they are celebrating all the moms out there with their amazing Mother's Day sale across all of Genucel.com. Save up to 70% off all skincare packages, including my favorite, their Eye Essentials package to help target under eyes, bags, puffiness, and even droopy eyelids. And with its immediate effects, see results in as little as 12 hours or your money back. And as a special gift, upgrade to Genucel's membership program and get a free beauty box with your with your purchase. That includes 2 of my mom's favorite skincare products. Genucel is an easy choice. Genucel contains ingredients for incredible results safely and quickly. It is as simple as that. World-class skincare at a fraction of the price. And best of all of Genucel's products are manufactured here in the USA, which we always love. Don't wait, order now and try Genucel's Eye Essentials package with the brand new eyelid lift for drooping, sagging eyelids. Go to Genucel.com/news, Genucel.com/news. Order now and shipping is also free. Go to Genucel.com/news. That's Genucel.com/news. Okay, let's come back to some foreign affairs, which are never a dull moment under this admin. I want you to take a listen to what transpired yesterday during President Trump's meeting in the Oval Office with new Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. Our president is no doubt a savage. Sometimes I think I'm watching a reality show as I'm getting these live feeds from the Oval Office. It's that funny. Take a listen.
Tariffing Canada. Is there anything he could say to you in the course of your meetings with him today that would get you to lift tariffs on Canada?
No.
Why not?
Just the way it is.
Nope. Now, the Trump admin has, of course, placed tariffs on Canada to pressure the country into addressing U.S. concerns about illegal immigration, drug trafficking, especially fentanyl, and trade imbalances. Now, Canada has worked with the U.S. on illegal immigration issues and the drug trafficking, but not so much on the trade reciprocity. So Trump wants Canada to reduce its trade surplus with the U.S., particularly by lowering Canadian tariffs on American goods like dairy and increasing imports to U.S. products to create a more reciprocal trade relationship between the two of us. So far, Canada has not complied, and in fact, they still have retaliatory tariffs in place on U.S. goods. Now, this is very stupid on Canada's part, and by the way, there was no option for Canada to choose a reasonable path here. The conservatives and the liberals in this country seem to be hell-bent on opposing President Trump and not cutting a deal here. Here's President Trump explaining the situation that Canada finds itself in and why it's so deeply stupid of them to continue on this unfair trade path.
How do you react if Canada decided not to shop in the American store as much as before and decided to partner with other countries?
Well, we don't do much business with Canada from our standpoint. They do a lot of business with us. We're at like 4%. And usually those things don't last very long. You know, we have great things, great product, the kind of product we sell nobody else can sell, including military. Look, we make the best military equipment in the world, and Canada buys our military equipment, which we appreciate, but we make the best military equipment in the world by far. The missiles, the submarines, everything. Everything we have is really top-notch.
Okay, so Canada is in a really weak position because it relies heavily on American markets. About 75% of its exports go to the U.S., while, like Trump said, only around 4% of U.S. exports go to Canada, giving the U.S. far more leverage. One positive from yesterday was that the Canadian Prime Minister said that Canada's government is prepared to reorient itself on security spending and pay its full weight in NATO. Trump tweeted this week. Why is America subsidizing Canada by $200 billion a year in addition to giving them free military protection? So obviously the Prime Minister is responding to this. He seems to be at least open to starting to finally pay their fair share. This is what the tariffs are meant to do. They are meant to actually get something out of these countries. He's not removing them because he hasn't gotten fully what he wants. And of course, Canada is not in any kind of position to be really negotiating anything with President Trump. What they should do is capitulate to this president because America has an upper hand in these discussions. So again, this is a step in the right direction that they're actually going to start to paying for their defense, providing their own defense. But Trump is not going to lift these tariffs until he has a lot more in concessions from a country that really is in no position to square up to the United States. What's more interesting than Canada is actually what's happening with China. President Trump and Xi Jinping are locked in this high-stakes trade war, and Xi is gambling that Americans won't give up cheap Chinese goods, while Trump is banking on China's economy buckling under tariffs and on U.S. companies relocating manufacturing in the long run. Now, what's interesting is we recently learned that several toys, such as Barbie, owned by Mattel, which have historically been made in China, are now shifting production elsewhere. And toy prices, experts are saying, are probably going to go up. But Trump is arguing that Americans can tolerate fewer, slightly more expensive goods. Meanwhile, China is struggling, exports are falling, factory activity has slumped, and consumer confidence is very weak. And with millions of Chinese jobs tied to U.S. exports, the loss of American demand is painful and hard to replace. Our economy, on the other hand, has remained actually relatively pretty resilient. We got strong consumer spending, investment growth. So long term, it looks like we are in a very good position. Now, some people are deeply disturbed by this idea that Barbie doll prices may be going up. Apparently, cheap goods from China is the American dream. Yeah, you heard that right. Cheap goods from China is the American dream, allegedly. Here's Mike Pence.
He said that cheap goods was not a part of the American dream. Well, I'm somebody who spent almost my entire life in public service. We lived on our paycheck while we raised 3 kids and put 3 kids through college. Cheap goods are a big part of it. I think we ought to be candid about that.
Well, let me tell you what the American dream is, Mike Pence. Owning a home, owning a car, sending your kids to college, all on one income, so your babies aren't raised in daycare. That's the dream. That's a dream that has been stolen from us. U.S. leaders, both political and corporate, chose to pursue so-called free trade deals that favored Wall Street and multinational corporations over American workers. Manufacturing jobs, which once paid well and supported families, were sent overseas to countries like China, where labor was cheap and environmental standards were low. And in return, Americans got cheap stuff, TVs and clothes and toys, but they lost the ability to build wealth through dignified, stable work. We've gutted small towns and working class communities. The factories closed. The wages have stagnated. So if today's version of the American dream is just cheap goods from China, that's not a dream at all. It's the consolation prize for a system that's robbed working Americans of real economic independence and prosperity. The more I learn in this world, the more I exist, the more that I realize, and I'm figuring it out, you guys, sometimes I make mistakes, I offer corrections, I correct myself, you guys correct me, we're learning. And the more that I learn, the more that I realize Pat Buchanan was always right. Pat Buchanan has always been right. Here he was years ago, before anybody was talking about what is happening right now with China.
I do believe this. We're going to have the American unipolar world where we're the single last superpower. That is definitely over. I think China is an emerging superpower by 2020. Economically and militarily, it'll be the dominant power in Asia. And I think an emerging superpower. Look, if they just...
But we're not dead by 2025,
well, the United
right?
States
I
is
was
not going
worried.
to be... 2025, what concerns me is what's happening here at home. That we seem to be disintegrating as one nation, under God, indivisible. All those things we had, it seems to me we're losing. We are very much at war with each other. And it's over ideology, politics, religion, philosophy, everything. And the terms we're using on each other, I'm on cable as you are. I mean, every day somebody's calling somebody else a racist.
I think this is a great point because, and I like that he brought up the race wars at the end, where he laid out the real threat of China. The problem, the real fight, is the one between working class and corporate elites who have gutted this country. And while we argue over things like identity, Wall Street has been shipping our jobs overseas, automates our labor, sells our future for quarterly profits, and we're just left with the scraps. Minimum wage gigs at Walmart, driving for Uber, juggling side hustles with no ladder to climb, no pension to earn, and no dignity to the work we're doing. That is what's happened. And I believe in the culture wars. I believe that, what's happening culturally really matters. And at the same time, a lot of the race wars, the gender, and the sexuality conversations seem to get in the way of where there's actually some authentic common ground between the right and the left when it comes to the selling out of the American people. It was leftists who were protesting China's admission into the trade organization back in 1999. It was the Bernie Sanders, the prequels to the Bernie Bros. And now it's the Republicans who are talking about this, and the Democrats have seemed to abandon this issue, but it's something that I think we can come together on. Here's Batya Ungar-Sargon on cheap toys.
All right, you know what this is kind of making me think a lot about is the fact that every rich person I know, their daughter has 2 or 3 dolls, maybe a couple American Girl dolls, 2 or 3 expensive, nice dolls, and no crap from China. But if you go into a broke person's house, that floor is littered with broken toys from the dollar store.
So now we're shaming people for being
Barbie shaming. Is the opportunity to make enough money to make the same decisions that every rich person is already making and keeping the cheap toys away from their kids. And the people braying the loudest about this are the people who would never let their kids buy those crappy toys. And it is so offensive to me because when you talk to working class people, they sound just like the president. They would love to be buying high quality stuff for their kids instead of 1,000 cheap things that are going to break immediately because that's what they can afford.
When real jobs and real wages return thanks to tariffs that protect American industry, people won't need to have a pile of cheap breakable toys from China to feel like good parents. They'll be able to afford fewer, higher quality toys made with care and pride here, hopefully here in America, just like the rest of what they can finally buy again. What matters isn't the quantity, it's the dignity of knowing that you earned it, the joy of giving your kids something that lasts, the pride of being part of an economy that values craftsmanship and self-reliance over mass-produced junk from, by the way, a slave economy. These cheap toys that are coming from China, do you think that they're going home and having regular wages? No, I mean, this is truly an evil economic setup that they have in China. People are working for criminal wages there. By the way, from a regime that is persecuting Christians, persecuting the Uyghurs, putting people in internment camps for the smallest little infraction, the smallest little semblance of dissent. Why do we want to be tied to this economy? Which, by the way, is, of course, gutting our own. I think, frankly, Mike Pence can shove it. He has no idea what the American dream is, clearly, and I'm glad that people like him are being excommunicated from this party. He has no right to have any say in who we are as Republicans anymore. The new right has taken over. Those people, they are completely irrelevant because you know what? They don't care about us. Like, it's obvious. If you watch that clip from Mike Pence, it's obvious Mike Pence does not give a crap about the American people or our economy or our culture or our identity. Right. Thank you, Michael. Did you say that out loud on the? Oh, he did. Sometimes Michael talks in my ear, and I think he's saying it to all of you, but he's just saying it to me. Michael, say that to everybody.
That's not my concern.
Do you guys remember that famous clip from Mike Pence? I think Tucker Carlson was asking him about Forever Wars, and he was just like, you know what? That's not my concern. And that's constantly what we're hearing from these people, right? That's not my concern. But you know what? America is not just an economic zone. We're not an economic zone for major corporations to thrive. We're not. We are more than that. We're deeper than that. What is America first is not just GDP growth, but it's, are the American people themselves thriving? Is the middle class still a thing anymore? That's what matters. That's what America first means. A lot of people in our party seem to be confused about that. And if they are confused, then they shouldn't be in the party. And somebody else who should be exorcised from this party, should be excommunicated from this party. If you're from North Carolina, you know who he is. GOP Senator Thom Tillis. Let's get this guy out of Congress ASAP. So GOP Senator Thom Tillis said he won't back Ed Martin, Trump's pick for the top DC prosecutor, because of Martin's work defending January 6ers. Like I said, North Carolinians, come and get your man. Send him home. This is the most shameful thing I've ever seen. Take a listen.
I met with Mr. Martin. He seems like a good man. Most of my concerns related to January 6th. I think anybody that breached the perimeter should have been in prison for some period of time. Whether it's 30 days or 3 years is debatable, but I have no tolerance for anybody who entered the building on January the 6th, and that's probably where most of the friction was. If Mr. Martin were being put forth as a U.S. attorney for any district except the district where January 6th happened, the protest happened, I'd probably support him.
So Ed Martin was one of the few voices consistently fighting for the January 6th defendants. He was raising awareness, he was organizing legal support, he was exposing the government's misconduct in these cases, such as hiding evidence from the defendants' lawyers. And here's Thom Tillis opposing this nominee because he actually liked Biden's J6 witch hunt. That's what he's saying in that clip. J6 prosecutions were transparently used simply to punish Trump supporters, to intimidate political dissent in this country under an authoritarian Biden regime. And now Thom Tillis is saying that was actually great, and I'm mad at this Trump pick because he opposed the weaponization of our government under Joe Biden. That clip, it's not just a portrayal of his own party. It is support of the weaponization of the state on the part of a Republican senator. And to add salt to the wound, Thom Tillis voted to confirm none other than Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland, probably the most corrupt AG in American history. And not only did he vote for Merrick Garland, Thom Tillis enthusiastically voted for him. This is what the senator wrote in a press release back in 2021. Merrick Garland has an outstanding record serving our country and has a deep understanding of the law. His experience reflects his extensive legal knowledge and unbiased application of the law, and his long-standing reputation of bipartisanship has earned the respect from both Democrats and Republicans. After talking to him and participating in his confirmation hearing, I have no doubt he will serve our country well. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And you know, I don't need to remind you guys, but Merrick Garland's DOJ labeled concerned parents at school board meetings domestic terrorists, sat on its hands during violent left-wing protests, did nothing when pro-life pregnancy centers were being firebombed, but he tried to orchestrate pro-lifers being thrown behind bars, FBI raids on their homes, coordinated with big tech to suppress right-wing speech, presided over the FBI's raid on President Trump's home while slow-walking investigations into Hunter Biden, shielding the Biden family from any kind of scrutiny because they were selling out our country to places like Ukraine and China, infiltrated traditional Catholic communities. Here's all I'll say about this for now. North Carolina, please retire Tom Tillis. This man needs to go yesterday. You're done. We're done with people like this. We're done with Mike Pence. We're done with Tom Tillis and all of these rhinos who are in Congress acting against the mandate that the American people voted for when they voted for President Trump. You don't have a right to serve anymore. You're done. You don't have. So for some context, before I play for you this clip, President Trump made a new tariff announcement this week. It was that 100%. He is levying a 100% tax on movies made outside the United States, which, by the way, is a big deal and a big problem because Hollywood is choosing to shoot their films outside of the U.S., taking a lot of jobs out of this country. My brother lives in Los Angeles. He's actually one of these guys who said, yeah, like there's a lot less work than there used to be in the past because all of these movies, they're just going on to other places. And these jobs that actually matter, you're a PA, you're a camera guy, you're a sound engineer, you work on lighting, you don't have those opportunities anymore because they're just not coming to America. Now, the big movie studios, they still make money, but ultimately the guys who have working class jobs in Hollywood, trying to make a living, they're losing a lot of opportunities. So here is Whoopi's reaction to this Trump tax.
Okay, look. You can't do that because what that equates to is you're going to tell me how to write the story I want to write if it happens in Europe. You're telling me that if my book comes out and I want to write it, you're telling me how to write it. You're telling me you're going to charge me for that. Well,
Okay, so honestly, I think this is a great idea because she's suggesting that Trump is trying to control movies. And I actually think maybe perhaps Trump should be approving movie scripts too. Not only should we have this tax to say, hey, you guys have to have your movies here in America if you're going to make them, but also let's have Trump approve movie scripts. Imagine a gilded pen in hand, Diet Coke fizzling on the desk. He's flipping through pages of overindulgent wokeness and CGI plot holes, and then he'll squint at yet another crappy remake, and he'll just be like, this needs more America in it, and less of whatever this is. I think Trump is he's an entertainer at his heart. Like, he knows branding, he knows how to get people's attention. It would honestly be the best thing ever for Hollywood. Here is Alyssa Farah Griffin.
A lot of states have tax incentives to shoot there. Georgia's kind of become the Hollywood of the South because they make it cheaper to make movies there. That makes sense. 100% tariff. I mean, I'm thinking more TV shows, but like Emily in Paris, is it going to be Emily in Paris, Texas, or like White Lotus, Mar-a-Lago edition? Like the stories will be very limited if you can only shoot here.
Michael was like, I'm too libertarian for Trump to be approving movie scripts. And I'm like, it's a joke. It's a joke. But I mean, it would be great. Honestly, it would be great. And I would 1000% watch White Lotus Mar-a-Lago edition. That would be the most amazing show I've ever heard of. The last season of White Lotus, not so great, was not a fan. Ultimately, I thought it was not as good as the first two. White Lotus Mar-a-Lago, I would watch that. I think we got to make him a producer in chief at this point. And in all seriousness, Hollywood was once a beacon, a shimmering beacon of storytelling and creativity. And now what do we have? We just have a bunch of reboots, soulless sequels, annoying political lectures. The magic of cinema, the ability to captivate, to transport, to inspire, it's really been traded for virtue signaling and for checkbox casting. Imagination suffocated under the weight of this forced messaging. Hollywood truly needs some kind of revolution of vision. I think producer-in-chief Trump would be an excellent idea of how to fix this. And I'm sure the View would flip out. Oh my goodness, Trump's trying to control movies, but the movies would be better for it. By the way, speaking of Trump actually taking on broken institutions, I got two stories for you guys. First one is yesterday, the Supreme Court allowed the Trump administration to begin executing its ban on transgender military service members. The justices, this is a huge deal, guys, the justices blocked a lower court order that temporarily halted the ban's enforcement. Now, this is a big deal because for a lot of reasons. But first, let me just say, healthcare costs for transgender service members, particularly those who undergo transgender surgeries on the taxpayer's dime, increase military medical expenditures by up to $8.4 million a year. This is completely unnecessary, a waste of taxpayer resources. And no one knows where to put these individuals. There's an interpersonal problem too with transgenders. Do you put them with the men? Do you put them with the women? It sows a lot of chaos on matters which should be very clear, right? If you're a man, you go in with the men's unit, female unit. Now we just got these people who are problems. And then of course there's the fact that the military needs to be focused on effectiveness and readiness. You can get denied because your eyesight is poor, because you're flat-footed. There's zero reason for mentally ill, gender-confused people to be serving. It's inappropriate. They should be getting help. I have sincere sympathy for people who suffer from this, but their role is not to be serving this country because it's a risk to the military, to the people that they serve with. You can't have mentally ill people having roles in the military which require you to be of sound mind. So this is, of course, a major win for the admin on that front. Again, rejuvenating, revitalizing, restoring our institutions. Another institution that the admin is attempting to reform is the university system. Now, I saw this headline yesterday and I was really excited. So apparently Columbia University has fired 180 staffers after the Trump admin cut $400 million in federal funding from the school. Now, again, I was ecstatic when I heard this. And if you listen to the show, you will know why. And then I read into this a little more, and I'm pretty upset, pretty annoyed about these 180 people who were fired. So, per a letter shared with NBC News, Columbia, the people who were fired from Columbia were working in whole or in part on impacted federal grants, meaning the firings do not address the broader issue at play here, which is to combat administrative bloat. The reason that college is so expensive and a huge reason why college is so politicized is because of the administrators. The administrators at universities are more left-wing than the professors. There are studies proving this. At Columbia, there are about 2 administrators for every 3 students. At some schools, there's more administrators than there are students. It's completely unnecessary. It's a bureaucratic hellscape. And it's why college is so expensive these days. And again, it's also why it's so radically left-wing. Since 2012, there has been a 54% increase in full-time administrators at Columbia. The university's core mission of education and research is an afterthought in this bureaucratic nightmare. So if Trump's cutting funding, stopping the taxpayer funded fueling of these schools, the hope is that they'll fire some of these administrators. But instead of firing the administrators, they're firing people related to the grant money. So it's not getting at the real problem here. You're not addressing the systemic issues. The university's decision to lay off research staff only fuels the politicization of the campus, considering that the administrators, like I said, are even more left-wing than the faculty. I think if the Trump admin wants reform, they have to demand that these schools, if they want to have federal funding, fire like 95% of these administrators, which again are driving the radicalism at oftentimes. The Trump admin has to have a administration decrease part of their demands to these schools. It's what's necessary if we actually want reform. And we've been talking a lot about broken institutions today. We talked about it yesterday. Most of these institutions seem beyond repair. But I think some are too important to abandon. We need to protect freedom, maintain order, keep the principles that make a nation strong. And So I called my yaya last night, my yaya meaning my grandmother, and I was asking her about an institution much older than the United States. I was asking her about the papacy and the upcoming papal conclave, which begins today. This is where the cardinals gather to elect a new pope for the Catholic Church. And my yaya told me that she's praying very diligently for a conservative pope. My yaya is old. She's seen a lot of change in the Catholic Church. Some of it's heartbreaking, right? Dramatic changes to the liturgy, a Marxist pope recently, hostility toward tradition, the sex abuse scandal and cover-up. Like it's been some time, you know, like the church has been through some things over the last few decades, but she's never considered leaving. And she reiterated that to me when she was discussing her prayer for this conclave, because the papacy isn't just about faith. It is about faith, but it's also has a role in civilization. For centuries, strong church leadership has preserved culture, defended against tyranny, shaped moral order. Today, the church seems flooded with leaders who reject its own history and tradition. Abandoning it now, I think, and she believes, would mean surrendering one of the last true pillars of faith and reason in a world that is starved for truth. And that's why faithful Catholics, and really Christians everywhere, should work to restore it, not tear it down. This is what conservatives do. We don't destroy, we rebuild. And right now, that's exactly what the world needs. Even simply with your prayers for this conclave that starts today, we need a strong church for what we're up against, a conservative pope. And like I said, we are up against, frankly, religious persecution left and right. It's not as bad as China or maybe what's happening in Congo or Syria, but we're seeing it here in the United States as well. The state of Washington is now under federal investigation by the Trump admin for the state's newly signed law that orders priests to break the seal of confession by reporting confessions related to child abuse or face jail time. Now, in the Catholic Church, we have something called confession. What is confession? You go and you tell your sins to a priest, and he, standing in for Christ, absolves you. It's a very beautiful sacrament. It provides not only forgiveness, but also accountability and guidance. And a huge part of confession is that priests are sworn to secrecy. They are not to repeat the sins to anyone. But this new bill demands that Catholic priests violate their faith, violate that vow. Trump's DOJ has opened a civil rights investigation into Washington state's new law. They argue that the law specifically targets clergy by removing their right to privileged communication, unlike other professionals, and violates the First Amendment's guarantee of religious freedom. And this is clearly just a brazen attack on religious liberty. For Catholics, the confessional is a sacred space of absolute confidentiality. So forcing priests to absolve what is shared in confession is not just a legal intrusion, it is a profound violation of religious practice that has been respected for centuries. Again, the Catholic Church is institutional, it's civilizational. And the intention to fight child abuse sounds noble, and that's the whole point. It's meant to back people into a corner. Oh, so you like child abuse then? That's what the argument will be. It's like when you support the Second Amendment and they say, oh, well, you must like school shootings. It's a non-argument. It's manipulative. And it's anti-Catholic bigotry from the people who actually were deeply offended not that long ago for Trump hilariously joking about becoming the next pope and posting a meme of himself. Like the same people who are saying, oh, we got to have priests violate the seal of confession are the ones saying, oh my gosh, it was deeply offensive that Trump posted a meme. I just don't want to hear it from these people. I don't, especially because of what is going on in California. You want to tell me the Democrats care about children, and then you have this story from California. When Democrats in the assembly in California are currently opposing making it a felony to solicit sex from minors in California. So Democrats are resisting legal penalties on child sex trafficking because of its supposed impact on LGBTQIA plus individuals and older teens in relationships. It's both absurd and alarming and somehow not surprising at all. The institutions that once guarded innocence and virtue have been hollowed out. That's what I'm telling you guys. That's what I've been saying this whole show. Weaponized against those who dare to speak truth or to live by principle. From our borders to our schools from our churches to our courts, the rot is clear. And yet for every example of corruption, for every betrayal of those meant to protect and serve, there's a growing wave of people who see it for what it is. Maybe it's true what they say, that light shines brightest in the darkest places. And maybe that's exactly what we're beginning to see, that people are waking up and they're starting to question everything that they once accepted without a second thought. The whispers are getting louder, and the answer is not to abandon these institutions entirely, but to reclaim them, to remember what they were meant to be before the bureaucrats and the ideologues got their hands on them. Because if enough people decide that they've had enough, if enough people stop surrendering their autonomy to empty promises, then maybe the walls are going to come down and we can actually rebuild from the inside out. And that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning into this show. If you want to follow me on X or Instagram, my user is Evita Duffy_1. Shout out to my husband, Michael, for putting this show together. Give him some love in the comments. He always does an amazing job. He's the greatest producer of all time. Thank you, Mikey. I'll see you guys all tomorrow.
Maybe God is stirring us, bringing us to the brink of danger, in order that we might begin to examine ourselves and restore the dignity of man and a belief in God.